You know, the best part about the PlayStation 5 unboxings that we had when the embargo lifted a little while ago was just how large the system was as people took it out of the box and kind of their overall reaction to this massive system that they now had and had to figure out where they were going to put it. Would it fit in an entertainment center? Would they have to knock a shelf out of it? All of this. But it turns out the PlayStation 5 was actually larger during its planning stages. Yeah, it kind of caught me off guard with this headline, but there was an interview with the person who actually designed the overall look of the PlayStation 5, and we're going to go over that here today. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button down below. It helps out a ton, and if you're new here to the Spawn Wave Plus channel, make sure you subscribe down below. So, this was an interview with the Washington Post, and as you can see here, Yujin Morisawa, who did work to create the overall design of the PlayStation 5, and he had some words around the reaction from the internet to what he had created, and even some of the process leading up to its eventual reveal. I want to start with this one right here, which is where the Washington Post asks about kind of the comparisons that people made in the memes, of course, online to household objects, whether it's like the router, or we saw the one where it was the dev kit where they would kind of turn it into a vacuum cleaner, but there were a lot of comparisons to different things in the house that people were already familiar with, and his answer was a bit interesting, a little surprising even. He says, I think it's a good thing when you design something, you want to make it feel comfortable. Sometimes it looks like a plant or some animal or some object. I think it's more comfortable than something that's weird or something that they've never seen before. I think there is a balance there. I think it's funny, though. I'm not offended or anything. I really like what people are playing with. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's good energy. And here's something to think about. All of those memes online about this, basically, it's people saying that they can compare it to something in their everyday life, so it fits in a bit better than people think it does when they first see it and kind of react to that design and go, oh, it looks like a router. That's something you're familiar with, and as he says, you might be a bit more comfortable with, and that's something that he was actually going for. So all of the memes online comparing it to different things around the house is technically a win in his book, which actually makes a lot of sense now why Microsoft leans so much into the Xbox Series X fridge meme. Anyway, then he was asked about the overall design and how large the system was and if there was a need to make it a bit smaller overall. And this is what he said. I didn't know what to expect in the beginning. I knew it was going to be larger because I know how much power there was going to be, so I knew how much airflow you would need and how much space for a heatsink. In the beginning, when I started drawing, it was much larger even though I didn't know what engineering was going to do. It's kind of funny that engineering actually told me it's too big, so I actually had to shrink it down a little bit from the first drawing when we wanted to get it much smaller, so it's the perfect size right now. If I made it thinner, there would be less airflow to it. It would disturb the player while they are playing. Form factor wise, I drew a perfect line around it and tried to hit the perfect size. Now, initially when I saw this, I said they were going to make it bigger, like it was going to be taller. I think what's being said here is that it was going to be wider. So it wasn't going to be as kind of thin, especially if you look at the PlayStation 5 digital version where there's no disk drive on the side. I still think that was the original design, by the way. But if you look at it that way, yes, it is thinner than the Series X, but it could have been wider. And I think that's what he's making mention of here, because if you look at the heatsink inside of the PlayStation 5, which we had that teardown, yes, it's very large, but it's also flattened. And that there's purpose there because Sony still wanted this system to look futuristic and sleek and not like a brick like we see the Series X. The Series X, as I mentioned, is very functional. Microsoft really went with engineering first and then said, how do we put this into a box? And they said, let's put it in a box. And hey, I mean, it worked out. It looks like a little PC tower. People seem okay with it. It kind of blends in. The PS5 was certainly set up to make a statement in the middle of your living room to go along with your really cool Sony TV, if that's what you picked up, and your Sony sound system and all of this. They wanted to have this PS5 as kind of being the center of attention. So while I think the looks department wasn't necessarily as important to Microsoft, I think it was pretty important to Sony, and it seems that engineering was kind of working to accommodate the design from the beginning, even telling him, hey, you can shrink it down a bit. We're going to work within these parameters here, and he said he drew a perfect line around it and then try to hit the size that was given to him. So it's also something to think about that the PS5 could get smaller, as we all assume it will eventually. I mean, I guess it could have been bigger, but we assume it won't get larger. PS5 Pro could happen someday, but the way I see this is they probably will eventually get to a PS5 Slim, and I think it'll probably shrink a bit in terms of height, but also in terms of width, as it's mentioned here. They could have made it thinner, but it would have been louder, and that was certainly something that, after Mark Cerny mentioned it, was a focus for them when it comes to the overall heat and being able to extract it without it being too audible. Like when I use my PS4 Pro and I play God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, anything that's partially demanding, the thing wants to go into orbit. Like the fans kick up really loud and tries to take off, and it was distracting. I mean, he says it here. It was something that would disturb the player while they're playing if we made this system too thin. So I know that the PS5 itself is going to make itself known in any living room that it's in or any setup, but at least it has a purpose and it is also functional, similar to how the Series X form factor is. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below. I really do wonder originally how much larger it was. Like, was it like a great deal larger, or was it just like a couple inches in terms of width because he thought that the heatsink would be stacked a bit higher? That's all I can imagine, because that's what he mentions here when it comes to the heatsink. Sony and their engineers worked around this design to flatten the heatsink, it seems, so that they could have a sleeker looking box, and that's fine. It seems like so far from reviews and previews and all these, the PS5 is working well when it comes to removing heat without it being too loud and distracting. So far, so good. We'll see what happens when millions of these systems get out there, because that's always the concern as these start to go out. What's the defective rate? All of these things. But hey, PS5 out in just a few days. Exciting times here. Let me know what you guys think about this. And if you're picking up a PS5, let me know which one you're getting down below. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.